Okay, welcome back, everybody, and good afternoon again. Do you hear me well? Right, so what an opening. This morning session, or afternoon, or evening for some, has been really inspirational, with all the faith leaders talking exactly to the subject and highlighting the importance of connecting not only the science, not only what we know, what's happening in the world, but also going back to our spiritual beliefs and how we must embrace attitude and behavioral changes so we can all together work in terms of protecting our earth. I am sure that my colleagues will be showing my presentation because I have a technical issue with that. So I will start by, right. So if we go to the first slide, please. Right, then the following slide, I still have, yeah, right. Okay, so the following slide, in fact, talks about the issues that we are facing today that have been addressed by Inger Anderson, by His Excellency the President. So the following slide, please. It is what we're facing today is unprecedented. We have all witnessed hurricanes, forest fires, sandstorms beyond comprehension. We are still facing the pandemic that is having impact on our social life or on our economies, but also on our environment. And we still have 1 in 9 people sleep hungry at night. And unfortunately, we still waste 1/3 of our food that we produce and that can contribute to feeding 1 billion people. The next slide shows that is because of we have infringed on the capacity of our earth. We have started eating up from the capacity, from the carrying capacity of earth. In just 100 years, we have increased in numbers from 2 billion to almost 8 billion people, requiring more food, more water, more resources, to sustain a living. But what type of living that we are living? We need currently 1.7 planets to be able to sustain life as it is on Earth. That has led to the risk of 1 million species to fall into the risk of extinction. And that is contributing to putting in danger our food systems. And this is what we call the Anthropocene, where humans are the main element impacting life on Earth. The next slide shows us that technology alone cannot solve these unprecedented problems that we are facing. Yes, technology is indeed very important. Technology is actually making us able to connect with 60 countries in one go. Technology has provided us with solutions to many different things, but technology alone cannot work. We have to embrace some behavioral changes. We need to revolutionize the way we deal with our resources. We need an ethical changes in the production and consumption patterns. The next slide shows us that there are principles that we need to embrace. The first principle, which is not not new, but an old principle, which is the religious ethics. For centuries, religions and religious followers have been following the teachings, the value systems, the standards, the morals, the spiritual understanding to guide us in the way we deal with our surroundings, with our neighbor, with our resources, and so on. The other concept is the concept of environmental ethics. Again, this concept is not new, but it depends on understandings that are accepted by some. For example, how environmental ethics work for a person sitting in a major city, in a mega city, and knowing about the cutting of trees. They would say, well, this is not acceptable. But what about a person who is left without food, left without energy? How does that contribute to them using their own natural resources that are available for their daily lives? This is very important to understand. The third concept that we will be addressing throughout this conference is the nature-based solutions, which is the approach that we are embracing to utilize and live within the capacity of Mother Earth and use its resources to confront the problems, not create the problems. And the next slide shows us that it has been done. And what we are talking about is not creating a new set of standards that is homogenized for everybody. We need to embrace the diversity that is provided by religions. But what we need is to build the common notion of a moral duty. The next slide tells us that there have been some approaches over the past 30 or 40 years to integrate some ethical understanding for environmental behavior. For example, in 1997, there was the Seoul Declaration on Environmental Ethics, the Millennium Declaration in the year 2000, again incorporated as part of the 6 fundamental values that are essential to international relations, the issue of traditions and culture, the World Center, the World Charter for Nature as well. There are many that have included some components. There was an initial understanding and attempt in the year 2001 by the United Nations Environment Program by launching the concept of environmental dimension of the dialogue among civilizations into the policy making. The Earth Charter that included culture as an important component of the agenda and Agenda 21. The global ethics, the declaration of the Parliament of World Religions that was created some years ago talks about the ethical value of environmental management. The next slide talks specifically on one of the attempts that has led both John Paul II and the economical patriarch that we listened today and very eloquently talked about our responsibilities. This meeting of faith leaders is very important. They've addressed the importance of our children, meaning the next generations, meaning that we have a responsibility towards leaving resources that have provided us the resources that we needed to live on this earth. The following slide starts talking about the examples from the faith. Next slide, please. For example, in my own country, in Jordan, they have realized that there is a power for the religion in conserving the scarce water resources. Jordan is the second scarcest country in the world in terms of water resources. So it was very important to include the spiritual values for the people by issuing a fatwa, which is the religious order that consumption of water should be in terms of what we have been learning through our religions. We need to conserve the resources. Prophet Muhammad, for example, said, conserve water even if you are at a running river. The following slide talks about another example of the Buddhists when they embraced the sacred forests. They embraced trees as sacred elements of creation and the existence of nature. Ordinating the trees is a symbolic movement towards responsibly dealing with our natural resources. The following slide is another example of the fatwa that was issued in Indonesia, where tremendous work has been done with the religious leaders to prevent cutting the trees and setting fires to make space for farmlands. These are all part of the understanding of the importance of going back to our spiritual beliefs. The following example talks about another approach. The second slide, please. This is how Christianity, for example, or Christian churches have embraced the presence of nature and how we can use nature for our daily use by putting solar systems to light up the churches, but also to provide energy supplies for the neighboring communities. The following slide talks about how religions, not only in their scripts, but also in their practices, now have started understanding the importance of nature. For example, in the Bible, some biodiversity species, 120 different types of biodiversity have been mentioned in the Bible. 50 of those were mentioned in the Quran. And it is important, it was found by the religions or religious institutions that conserving these are very important. Therefore, they have constructed the botanic gardens of the Bible, of the Quran, and so on. The Living Chapel that it was launched last June by the Vatican and the Living Chapel Project in association with the United Nations Environment Program and FAO is a demonstration of the necessity of using the natural resources, the recycled material, planting trees, using solar systems in one place to demonstrate that we can actually live with our natural resources. The following slide talks about another example of the mangroves. As we know, mangroves are the first defense line against floods, and some of the countries, for example, in the Dutch, the Dutch building of from nature some dikes to prevent flooding of the cities. In Indonesia as well, they are replanting mangroves to protect their shores after the tsunamis that they have suffered. The following slide